Dave Weinberg, Press of Atlantic City, covers the Eagles, columnist as well. He joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. A lot to discuss as we get ready for the Eagles offseason. And, Dave, the Eagles offseason took an interesting start.
Yeah, to say the least.
Your thoughts on Joe Santoliquito's article? I know you know Joe pretty well from the boxing world. He is a guy who, has covered boxing for years, so I'm sure you know him pretty well.
Yes, I do. He's actually the president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. So yeah, him and I go a ways back, and I've never known him to be anything but credible and accurate. But yeah, I was taken aback, to say the least, by what he wrote about the Eagles.
Right. I mean, you're a guy who's up there pretty much every single day and been around Carson his entire career. Any of the things that you heard or read in the article, like, whoa, this is completely surprising, or are you walk around like, I can see that?
Yeah, I'm kind of in that camp. I mean, I can see how people would take him like that. And I've seen, there's probably like about a half dozen players who have come out in defense of Carson, but that doesn't mean that Joe was wrong. It just means that those 6 guys have his back, which, and I don't know what they're supposed to. I would be more surprised if somebody came out and agreed with Joe, in social media. Right. So they're just kind of like showing support for their teammate, which I guess I don't want to say they have to do, but probably makes them look a little better too. But as John said the other day, you're going to get 53 guys in the locker room. Not all 53 are going to get along with everybody else, and I'm sure there's a faction there. I'm surprised that there isn't. If there wasn't, that kind of have that take on Carson.
Just real quick, I mean, if some of these guys, a lot of them are the leaders: Fletcher Cox, Malcolm Jenkins, Long, Lane Johnson, Zach Ertz. If those guys are coming out in support of, which is what you would expect, like you said. If the other guys who don't, does that say anything? Like if Alshon Jeffries just stays silent, does that cast doubt that maybe he's one of the guys that's in this?
It probably shouldn't, but it probably does. I mean, silence does, speak volumes. And the fact that you haven't seen Alshon or Nelson Aguilar or Jason Peters or some of the other guys come out in support or to disagree with the article, that kind of gets your attention. Quite frankly, I know that they are leaders and it's certainly within their realm to do so, but I don't place a whole lot of stock in what a defensive player says because they're not around Carson every day, really. I mean, they're not in the quarterback room, they're not in the offensive meeting rooms, so I think their contact with him is kind of limited. I mean, but they probably know him as a person, and if they want to speak to that, then I guess that's fine. But I would kind of I would put more weight on what an offensive player has to say or doesn't say.
Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City. You wrote the column about the sports franchises that usually don't make it in Atlantic City. We've had this conversation many a times over both our careers. Oddly, we've both lasted this long together, Dave. How about that? And this time,
yeah, there you go.
You say, consider me cautiously optimistic. The Arena Football League is coming to Atlantic City, and you're cautiously optimistic, Dave.
Yeah, well, the only reason I am is because of Jaws. I think if anybody can make this work, it's Ron Jaworski. He has the ties to the community. He has the ties to Atlantic City's government, if you will, pretty heavily involved in charitable endeavors and marketing and stuff. So I think that if anybody's going to, make a go of it, I think it's him. But I think that you can just see from what the Surf and the Seagulls and the Boardwalk Bullies, they all experienced success. They were all champions, yet weren't able to sustain the attendance necessary. So I think Arena League might be a little bit of a different animal. It's more of an established league compared to the independent leagues of baseball or the USBL, which I don't think of as in existence anymore. So I think they might have maybe a core fan base that might show up and support the team. My problem though is that a lot of those fans are Soul fans too. So I don't know if they're going to divide their loyalties. Are they going to keep going to Philly to support the Soul, or are they going to come here to support the Atlantic City team? I don't know if there's enough fans to go around to both teams.
Yeah, and I had read something that the Soul and the Albany franchise, which I believe is owned by both the same partnership, they average about 9,000 fans. And I had also read that that's about the number you need to make one of these teams work. I got to tell you right now, I don't see 9,000 people, maybe 5, but 9, I don't know about that.
Yeah, that's a pretty optimistic expectation. You're not going to draw 9,000, 9,500 is what I think the commissioner said yesterday, that, to consider a success. There might be some games where you draw that, but you're not going to draw it on a consistent basis. You're just not.
In your opinion, why was Atlantic City attractive? I mean, we've seen the failures. You wrote about it. Why was Atlantic City attractive this time around?
It's easy. Sports betting. That's the Arena League kind of took that tack from the very beginning when they were looking into expanding. They had already gone down to like 4 teams after being like in the 20s, I think, like maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And as soon as sports betting became illegal in Atlantic City, they kind of viewed that as maybe the savior. They're envisioning where team players, fans go to sports books, place bets, and they're even thinking long term in the fact that you could maybe actually sit at your seat at Boardwalk Hall and make the bet in the game. And they kind of view that as the future and something that's going to both save the team and save the league. So it was clear that sports betting was the reason Atlantic City is a franchise.
Which is interesting, and the league has gone through some ups and downs. I mean, obviously it was at its height. It's had players that went to the league like Kurt Warner. There was multiple teams. It was down to 4 teams just 2 years ago. I think it had 5, and Atlantic City will be the 6th team. So the league itself is going through a kind of a change.
Yeah, I mean, it was down in there was actually, back, 15 years ago or so, there was actually an AFL too. That's why it was that popular where everybody wanted an indoor football franchise. But I don't know what the reason was, but I guess various teams couldn't support it. Las Vegas being one of them, they folded, I think, after a year. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of other towns kind of fell by the wayside, and they have bigger populations than what Atlantic City does. Yeah. So that's going to be a challenge for them, I think. The more that they can get the community involved, youth programs, high school teams, that kind of stuff, if they can maybe tap into that fan base, I think it'll help them. But like you said, they're going to have a really tough time drawing 9,000 people for every game.
Yes. Now, the Bullies were probably the most successful of the teams. The biggest problem was parking, the price to park. Do you think that they are cognizant of those issues from the past and can fix that? Can you? I don't even know where is the plaza still parkable?
I think there is a parking garage there, yeah, but I don't know what it costs. I think it's a pretty minimal amount. I just read I think I was reading on Twitter yesterday where people don't think it's going to work unless you offer free parking at Boardwalk Hall. And I would agree with that. Maybe not free, but a buck or two might be reasonable. But if you're gonna expect Bally's to keep charging $20-$25 to park there and then to walk down the Boardwalk Hall, then that's never going to work. No. You have to. But this is a new regime, so to speak, at Boardwalk Hall now than there was when the Boardwalk Bullies were there. So maybe they have a better take on the landscape. People are not necessarily willing to shell out those big bucks to park and go watch a game. Yeah. So, hopefully they'll realize that and either offer free parking or pretty cheap.
I'll tell you, I went to indoor ice racing there 2 weeks ago, and they were charging $25 to park for that. So I can't imagine that.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, to park underneath at Boardwalk Hall, the underneath little parking down there, $25 for indoor ice racing.
Oh man, that's a disgrace.
Yeah. The Soul played a game there against Vegas a couple of years ago. It was on TV. Yep. They made a big deal out of it. They didn't come back. Was there?
No, it didn't draw very well.
I was going to say, was there a reason they didn't come back? And did do they feel that from that experience that they could get more if they had a team there regularly? Because you're right, they didn't come back.
Yeah, it was kind of, I won't say it was like thrown together at the last minute, but there wasn't a whole lot of build up to it. I remember Tropicana kind of stepped in and offered some support for it. It was called like the DraftKings Boardwalk Bowl or something.
Yep.
And, you know, there's supposed to be this big annual rivalry between Atlantic City and Vegas. Well, one thing, Vegas didn't last after that year, so that took away the rivalry. And they announced attendance of like 6,000, but there was really maybe 3 or 2. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of support for it. And from what I recall, it was supposed to be a home game at the Soul at the Wells Fargo Center, but the center was being used for something else, so they kind of substituted Boardwalk Hall for it. And then I think the next year they went up in like Allentown or something in that arena and played a game. And maybe they drew a little bit better there. I don't know. But, yeah, I was a little surprised they didn't come back. I guess it was a combination of the rivalry with Vegas wasn't there and the support wasn't the best either.
Gotcha. Well, we'll see. Do you have a name for the team yet, Dave?
Me? No. Well, let's see. It seems like everything gets named the Seagulls or the Sharks or something. I don't know. But I imagine it'll have some sort of nautical theme. But I got to give them credit for letting the fans pick it. That's kind of cool. Yeah,
they did that with the Albany franchise as well. And I talked to the people in Albany, our sister station up there in Albany, 104.5 The Team. They're very, they do a lot with the team, and they said it draws well. They do about 9,000 up there in Albany, and it's a different community, but they do well, and it's the same ownership group. So we shall see.
Yep. And that's I think it's probably more of a year-round
yes
population there. I mean, what the heck else is there to do at Albany than go watch football?
I've been there before. I can tell you, not much. So we shall see.
Hopefully, I'm really hoping that Atlantic City gets behind it because, like I wrote, they don't have the best reputation as far as supporting teams, but hopefully this will be different.
Read Dave's piece at the Press of Atlantic City. Follow Dave on Twitter at PressAC Weinberg. He writes, sports franchises usually don't last in AC, but he's cautiously optimistic for this one. All right, Dave, good piece, man. I enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.